bridges in the sky, shining in the sun. They are stone and steel and wire, they are languages, free and all. They are land understanding, and they're learning more. They are languages, free and all. They are land understanding, learning more. There are canyons, are yawning in the night. They are like canvas, are doing the flight. They are here like me and cry. They are so, and they're so very wide. They are here like me and cry.
Oh, I'm the only one on?
Yep, so far.
Can you zoom in a bit?
Yeah, we can't zoom in over how.
That's fine.
Let us build a bridge of peace, let us sing the song. Let us stand together and let us write another wrong. Oh, come watch us where and find today. Some have been building bridges and they are gone away. Oh, come watch us where and find today. Some have been building bridges and they are gone away. We will tell them building bridges and be off and on our way. Thank you, Bill Staines, and welcome to Bridges Programming. And this is Sunday on the front stoop, and I'm going to walk over here on the front stoop now.
Oh, you're coming over to the front stoop.
I'm going to come over here and talk to you guys. How are you?
And the first thing
well, the thing is, this is Sunday on the front stoop. This is not quite the front stoop, but it's where we can keep our microphones. And anybody is welcome to join us on Google Hangouts on air. And we have with us today Susan Comont, Dennis Carius. Hello, Dennis.
By electronic connection, he's somewhere else.
This is the biggest front stoop in the world. It's a worldwide front stoop, and our hope is to get different people from around the world to contact us. This is a trial run, and Levi from Techceptional Solutions is the tech person who's running the whole program, and he's sort of monitoring us on this thing,
making sure we don't mess up too much.
Screw it up.
Now that we're actually leaping into
the future
technologically, right? Leaping.
Now, another thing, this is called Puff the Pope today, because the Pope.
It's not like Puff the Magic Dragon.
No, but
it's Puff the Pope.
Puff the Pope, because the mainstream
He's saying very interesting stuff.
The mainstream media is not picking up on what the Pope is saying. They're just picking up on parts of it so they can argue with it. And the problem we're running into now.
So they can deconstruct it.
Yeah, they want to
break it apart,
divide and conquer.
Right.
And in our travels or our readings, or Susan's readings actually, we've come across a lot of stuff, and one of the most interesting things we came across is Bucky Fuller. And Buckminster Fuller is known as, he was known as an architect, a very famous architect. However, that's not his big deal. I thought of him as the geodesic dome, and I thought of him maybe as someone who's a genius in architectural work, and I've seen lots of his work. But all of a sudden, we met somebody in one of our programs who ran a Center for Economic and Social Justice, and we're going to try to get him on as soon as we possibly can.
You're talking about Norm Kurland, right?
Norm Kurland.
Right.
He's 85 years old, and he was the one who introduced us to
Buckminster Fuller in the true sense of Buckminster Fuller. And Buckminster Fuller was one of the main pushes for an economy that's based on energy units. He uses
very important that his motivation, he was a humanitarian.
Right, he was a humanitarian.
Right. And his motivation was to help this the human species survive.
And he also was part of the Navy, the Navy, and
he was trained in the Navy. Yeah.
Yeah, he was trained as a naval officer of some type, and he was an avid reader. And all of a sudden, he's come up with some great stuff compared to anthropology, compared to how this economic system started. And we were pretty much right on with the way the kings were made, but he actually has a new twist to it.
Yeah, it was very interesting. We're reading his operating manual for Spaceship Earth, and this little book is from the library. It's only a half an inch thick, but most of his writings are, maybe 2 inches thick.
We're going to try to buy this book.
This is a nice, overall view of his thinking. If you want to start out understanding what Buckminster Fuller is about, operating manual for Spaceship Earth.
So anyway, so that's the name of the book, and
we're gonna have to make programs on that.
But I want to tie this into the Pope. The Pope is saying all the things that's wrong with the technology and with the economy, and Buckminster Fuller connects all those things up and telling you what's the matter with it. But he also starts out, not specifically in the book, but he starts out saying that we have to base things on I just went blank on the name, an energy number. I think he called them millivolt, he calls them volts of some type, but he actually is talking about an energy unit. And nowadays, you can break it down to joules. I spoke to some kid in the supermarket yesterday, and a young fella, and I said, "You know what energy units are?" He said, "Yeah, joules," which is very rare for someone to understand that there's such a thing as joules. They're small energy units that we can base things on.
Well, the energy from the sun.
Energy from the sun, right?
It is what it's defining. One of the references that Buckminster Fuller makes is that when the concept of zero was understood through most of Europe, coming from Asia. That's where the concept originated. But once Europe understood the concept of zero, this made all the types of activities that Europe was functioning in at that time leap forward greatly, because they were able to have a starting point for what they were counting from mathematically. We depend so heavily on our measurements and on our ability to quantify things, and that concept of zero improved mathematics, so incredibly, so that suddenly, they were calculating things and actually naming physical phenomenon that people were living within and understood, because they'd always been living with it, but they didn't understand it to be able to manipulate it in a maybe a beneficial way. But not all the time do people choose to manipulate what they understand in beneficial ways. But there was the opportunity then to do that. And the concept of zero is such an important concept. And we can go into that more thoroughly in another program. But Buckminster Fuller does mention that in his operating manual for Spaceship Earth. Recommend that you try to get that from your library system. It had a short run of a great deal of popularity back in maybe it was the 60s and 70s, but it was not easy to get, at least for me, through the library system here. And so it's starting to recede and be, buried under many, many other books and concepts that have happened since. But this is something that needs to come forward again, I feel. And he gives an incredible overview of what's happened to us historically, why it's happened, where it started. It's always interesting to know where things start. And that's also in math. Also, when you start with 0, you know where you're coming from, and that helps you know how far you're going, where you're going. So these are important things. The understanding of measurements. And do you want me to go ahead and read some
Dennis,
from?
Dennis, I had to step away from the.
Because we're puffing the Pope today, and I don't want to puff Buckminster Fuller prematurely.
Do you understand what Susan was talking about? Did we make that clear enough?
Yeah, Susan always does a great job making everything clear.
Dennis, you are my best friend. You are my buddy.
Very best friend. What do they call the kids call that?
BFF. Best friend forever.
BF. Okay, now we have a chat room open. I just want to tell people how they can get to us. To list the available comments and enter, there's a group chat list open on Bridges Programming.
Okay.
And you can get to that.
As you can tell, we're doing this for the first real full
Okay, I don't want to go into detail
expanse
about that, but you can,
what's available.
we,
Right. Well, you're the one who brought it up.
Okay, so you can get to our group chat.
I'm just sitting here.
And enter chat message here, so let me try that out.
But I'd be glad to begin with narrating from the encyclical, Pope Francis's encyclical.
Okay, let's go to Pope Francis.
And then you guys can stop me and comment on what.
Okay, we have 15 minutes, it looks like here, so let's go to.
I'll read till you take a break.
And I've got my music set up for our next break. So
okay, you're all set.
You do that.
All right.
Good enough. We'll be back.
And this is a continuation of our reading from the encyclical. Let's see here, called "On Care of Our Common Home."
Oh, by the way, Our Common Home. Now we're going to read later on from Bucky's book, and he calls Our Common Home a spaceship. Dennis, you'll like this.
Oh yeah, and he says we're all astronauts, and we always have been.
On this spaceship.
Spaceship Earth. That's why he calls it Spaceship Earth.
Did you know that?
Wow, that's very interesting.
Yes.
Because some people, and really, there are some people that just think this planet Earth is the only planet out there that has any life on it. But really, it's just about us floating in the ocean. We're fish floating in the ocean. We're the only fish in this ocean. There's no other fish here. Well, do you know out there, just in this galaxy, in the Milky Way galaxy, there are 400 billion stars.
Okay, we know. Okay, but I just want to let you know that the concept is that Bucky is saying that we are on a spaceship, and all these stars out there are spaceships, and we're one of them, and we are astronauts on a spaceship. So when they say, I'd like to be on a spaceship, we are on a spaceship.
Right, and we're already traveling, Dennis. So
and now I'm going to bring
your wish is granted.
Your wish is granted. You
yes.
now can fulfill your bucket list on a spaceship.
Okay, and now we're going to hear from Pope Francis here, and I'm at paragraph 194. For new models of progress to arise, there is a need to change, quote, models of global development, and this will entail a responsible reflection on, quote, the meaning of the economy and its goals with an eye to correcting its malfunctions and misapplications. Unquote. It is not enough to balance in the medium term the protection of nature with financial gain or the preservation of the environment with progress. Halfway measures simply delay the inevitable disaster. Put simply, it is a matter of redefining our notion of progress. A technological and economic development which does not leave in its wake a better world and an integrally higher quality of life cannot be considered progress. Frequently, in fact, people's quality of life actually diminishes by the deterioration of the environment, the low quality of food, or the depletion of resources. In the midst of economic growth, in this context, talk of sustainable growth usually becomes a way of distracting attention and offering excuses. It absorbs the language and values of ecology into the categories of finance and technocracy, and the social and environmental responsibilities of business often get reduced to a series of marketing and image-enhancing measures. The principle of the maximization of profits, frequently isolated from other considerations, reflects a misunderstanding of the very concept of the economy. As long as production is increased, little concern is given to whether it is at the cost of future resources or the health of the environment. As long as the clearing of a forest increases production, no one calculates the losses entailed in the desertification of the land, the harm done to biodiversity, or the increased pollution. In a word, businesses profit by calculating and paying only a fraction of the costs involved, yet only when, quote, the economic and social costs of using up shared environmental resources are recognized with transparency and fully borne by those who incur them, not by other peoples or future generations, unquote. Can these actions be considered ethical? An instrumental way of reasoning which provides a purely statistic analysis of realities in the service of present needs is at work whether resources are allocated by the market or by state central planning. What happens with politics? Let us keep in mind the principle of subsidiarity, which grants freedom to develop the capabilities present at every level of society, while also demanding a greater sense of responsibility for the common good from those who wield greater power. Today, it is the case that some economic sectors exercise more power than states themselves. But economics without politics cannot be justified, since this world would make it impossible to favor other ways of handling the various aspects of the present crisis. The mindset which leaves no room for sincere concern for the environment is the same mindset which lacks concern for the inclusion of the most vulnerable members of society. For, quote, the current model with its emphasis on success and self-reliance does not appear to favor an investment in efforts to help the slow, weak, or the less talented to find opportunities in life, unquote. What is needed is a politics which is far-sighted and capable of a new, integral, and interdisciplinary approach to handling the different aspects of the crisis. Often politics itself is responsible for the disrepute in which it is held, on account of corruption and the failure to enact sound public policies. If, in a given region, the state does not carry out its responsibilities, some business groups can come forward in the guise.
I want to interject here something, and this is a problem well, not a problem, but something we recently added to. We were always talking about renewable energy for 30 years, and we always blamed the politics, and we said if we can change the politics, we can have renewable energy. Now, the interesting part about that is only about 2 or 3 years ago, about 2 or 3 years ago, we realized that it wasn't the politics that was the problem, it was the economic system controlling the politics. So then we asked ourselves, and this is a group of us together, not just me, and there were different people. There was an anthropologist, there was a physicist involved, some economists involved, some other people were involved, and we said there's something wrong, not so much with the political system, but with the economic system that controls the political system. So we asked ourselves, what's wrong with the economic system? And we found, and after looking at it very carefully, we found out it wasn't based on anything that is physical.
There's no zero there.
There's no start point or zero, like Buckminster Fuller was talking about.
Right. We have to put a zero.
And the Pope is just saying that we're blaming politics, but it's not politics. It's
They're
the
crippled.
economic system. They are crippled by the way the system has no start point. And that's been going on for 5,000 years. And it's the biggest belief system in the world, the economic system. So we need to change that economic system so it's based on physics for humanity. And that's the game on that. So, story.
I'm going to continue, okay?
Okay, go ahead. I just wanted to interject.
Yes, I think that's a good thing. You interject whenever you want. Okay, I'm going to read that sentence over again. If in a given region the state does not carry out its responsibilities, some business groups can come forward in the guise of benefactors, wield real power, and consider themselves exempt from certain rules, to the point of tolerating different forms of organized crime, human trafficking, and drug trade and violence, all of which became very difficult to eradicate. If politics shows itself incapable of breaking such a perverse logic and remains caught up in inconsequential discussions, we will continue to avoid facing the major problems of humanity. A strategy for real change calls for thinking processes.
Can you reread that, please?
Okay. The sentence?
No, just that paragraph.
That sentence?
Yeah.
If politics shows itself incapable of breaking such a perverse logic and remains caught up in inconsequential discussions, we will continue to avoid facing the major problems of humanity.
Kudos for the Pope.
You're right. A strategy for real change calls for rethinking processes in their entirety.
Rethinking processes in their entirety. That's the Pope speaking, not me. That's the Pope speaking. Listen, and why isn't the mainstream media picking up on this the same way we are? Go ahead.
For it is not enough to include a few superficial ecological considerations while failing to question the logic which underlies present-day culture. A healthy politics needs to be able to take up this challenge. Politics and economy tend to blame each other when it comes to poverty and environmental degradation. It is to be hoped that they can acknowledge their own mistakes and find forms of interaction directed to the common good. While some are concerned only with financial gain and others with holding on to or increasing their power, what we are left with are conflicts or spurious agreements where the last thing either party is concerned about is caring for the environment and protecting those who are most vulnerable. Here, too, we see how true it is that, quote, unity is greater than conflict, unquote.
In other words, when he says unity is greater, there's another word for unity is cooperation. Instead of competing with countries and individuals and companies, if we can come together and cooperate with each other, we'll benefit the entire human race. And as Dennis calls it, Dennis, we'll save our planet. And understand something, that when you save the planet, what you're talking about, if we're on this spaceship and the spaceship is going around in outer space, as spaceships do, and we damage our sustainable or our air supply or our water supply or our food supply, we will die. The spaceship is still going to be floating around the atmosphere. And that's exactly what the Pope is saying, and exactly what Buckminster Fuller is saying. And it's exactly why we need that measurement, to measure where we are, because we can't get there without the zero start point. We must have a start point. Here's where you are on the map. It's so important. Now, by the way, when we take, okay, go ahead. You have any comments, Dennis?
Because I think we're being brainwashed by mainstream media, and what we're doing here is we're telling the truth. I read something very interesting. It said that Big Oil says that we will have solar power when they can put a meter on the sun.
Yeah, I love it.
Well, they've actually done that, Dennis. They've actually done that now because you can now make
you can lease
because they're losing so much money because they can't make as much as they wanted to. So now they're investing in solar panels and leasing the solar panels to us. So on short-term gain, they're making a lot of money. And then hopefully they're going to try to keep that.
And they you're referring to as
Well,
banking, economics,
right. The
business.
The banking,
Okay. It's not, you know, they're not the evil empire. It's just the way that things are being done
Right,
now.
it's
And we
not
have to become aware so that we can
it's not that
change things
it's
for
not
the
that oil
better.
companies are bad. It's not that the rich people are bad. It's not like they're not bad. There are psychopathic people who are bad, but most of the cases, most people, according to Marco, our other programmer who does work for World Beyond Belief, he said on one of the programs I heard him say, one out of 100 people, or as high as 4 out of 100 people, are psychopathic. And they make great actors because they don't care what they say and they just say it so dramatically. But the reality is that most people, you know, 1 out of 4 is a lot of people who don't care, but we're tied up in this system that is dramatic. It is so we are so ingrained in the system. Mainstream media is controlled by the economic system, including your NPRs of this world. They have to raise money to stay going, and if the big money says we'll give you money to keep your salaries running, and we'll build
Don't criticize our businesses.
Don't criticize the oil companies.
Or whatever businesses.
Yeah, maybe
it doesn't have to be
the war industry or the prison industry.
Right, exactly.
It's all part of the economic system. Anyway, I just want to bring that out.
And variety is what is our strength. Our diversity is our strength. So psychopaths serve a purpose too, and everybody has a purpose. A purpose in this huge arena.
We don't want to kill people. We don't want to blame them. We want to figure out how we can all work together, including the people who we would consider. When I say we, the proverbial we, the people who think that we're together. We don't want to. I don't want to kill another. I don't want to kill anybody ever. And we must figure out a way to work together, even with people who we think want to kill us. So we need to make sure we don't do this. Anyway, that's my point.
This is okay. Now we're on to, in the encyclical, Pope Francis's encyclical, section 5, religions in dialogue with science. Boy, did we ever think we'd hear that? Religions in dialogue with science.
Many years ago, religion used to
kill scientists, right?
Because they weren't agreeing with
And it's
them.
not that many years ago.
No.
It's only a couple of hundred. Okay, that's really interesting. It cannot be maintained. So this is progress. Okay. It cannot be maintained that empirical science provides a complete explanation of life. Okay, he's qualifying him. Whoa, don't get too excited, right? The interplay of all creatures and the whole reality. This would be to breach the limits imposed by its own methodology. If we reason only within the confines of the latter, little room would be left for aesthetic sensibility, poetry, or even reason's ability to grasp the ultimate meaning and purpose of things. I would add that, quote, religious classics can prove meaningful in every age, and they have an enduring power to open new horizons. It is reasonable and enlightened to dismiss certain writings simply because they arose in the context of religious belief, unquote. It would be quite simplistic to think that ethical principles present themselves purely in the abstract, detached from any context. Nor does the fact that they may be couched in religious language detract from their value in public debate. The ethical principles capable of being apprehended by reason can always reappear in different guise and find expression in a variety of languages, including religious language. Any technical solution which science claims to offer will be powerless to solve the serious problems of our world if humanity loses its compass, if we lose sight of the great motivations which make it possible for us to live in harmony, to make sacrifices, and to treat others well. Believers themselves must constantly feel challenged to live in a way consonant with their faith and not to contradict it by their actions. They need to be encouraged to be ever open to God's grace and to draw constantly from their deepest convictions about love, justice, and peace. If a mistaken understanding of our own principles has at times led us to justify mistreating nature, to exercise tyranny over creation, to engage in war, injustice, and acts of violence. We believers should acknowledge that by so doing, we were not faithful to the treasures of wisdom which we have been called to protect and preserve. Cultural limitations in different areas often affect the perception of these ethical and spiritual treasures. Yet, by constantly returning to their sources, religions will be better equipped to respond to today's needs. The majority of people living on our planet profess to be believers. This should spur religions to dialogue among themselves for the sake of protecting nature, defending the poor, and building networks of respect and fraternity. Dialogue among the various sciences is likewise needed, since each can tend to become enclosed in its own language, while specialization leads to a certain isolation and the absolutization of its own field of knowledge. This prevents us from confronting environmental problems effectively. An open and respectful dialogue is also needed between the various ecological movements, among which ideological conflicts are not infrequently encountered. The gravity of the ecological crisis demands that we all look to the common good, embarking on a path of dialogue which demands patience, self-discipline, and generosity, always keeping in mind that, quote, realities are greater than ideas.
Okay, 1 second, I want to break into there. When he says the common good, a lot of people I know say, well, we have to be individualists. But as individualists, we work together. And we
create more individuality.
Right, because if we work together and we build together, then every individual has a different opportunity to help them, to not only when you help the entire society.
Jeff, you can't be answering the phone while we're doing a program.
We're going to take a little break right now, and I think I can do this. We'll be back in about 5 minutes. Please concentrate on the atrium. I'm going to try to put that up on the screen somehow, but we're going to do that. I'll learn to do that next week. But here we go. We'll be right back in about 5 minutes.
Human renewable energy measure.
We're back in 5 minutes.
You can't be answering the phone.
Looking for the answers to the mysteries of life. I've progressed through 13 lifetimes to try and make amends. And on Wednesdays I go running with my new age friends. I know that life's a journey and everything must change. But something happened yesterday that left me feeling strange. I was going to buy some crystals and my face tore down when I turned the corner and looked up. This is what I found. My new age crystal store is hot dog heaven now, where once I was from a cow, they'll still make you one with everything, but it's not the same. Somehow it's dogs instead of dog, and hot dog heaven now. There are no accidents. Some cause the cause the plans I made to be reversed and brought me to this hot dog stand. Perhaps not for the worst. Before I gave up eating meat, I'd buy 'em by the dozen. But what if in a former life this hot dog was my cousin? Joseph Campbell said, where your list leads you ought to follow. But this double-foot-long chili dog is awful hard to swallow. My new age crystal bookstore is hot dog heaven now, where once I searched for inner peace, there's innards from a cow. They'll still make you one with everything, but it's not the same somehow. It's munching and not eating at hot dog heaven now.
This whole thing got me thinking, and I know it's kind of hard, but if there's a hot dog heaven,
Could there be a hot dog God? Are the streets all paved with Stirred in that holy hot dog land, does Oscar Mayer guard the gate with a wiener in each hand? And if there's a hot dog heaven, is there a tofu hell where carnivores run screaming when they hear the dinner bell? Some questions we can't answer, and perhaps we shouldn't try. But as that neon Frank lights up the night, I sit and wonder why. My New Age crystal bookstore is hot dog heaven now, where once I searched for inner peace, their innards from a cow. They'll still think you want with everything, but it's not the same somehow. It's kraut instead of crystals, and hot dog heaven now. Pepsi, not recovery.
Onion rings, not earrings.
Trash cans and not ashrams, and hot dog heaven now.
Okay, we are back here. I think we're back. We are back here at Bridges program, Sunday on the front stoop. I didn't get my break in, but maybe I'll take my break because I was playing with the computer. We're talking about, this is Sunday on the front. Dennis, you there?
Dennis is here.
Okay, I was told by the email we're getting an echo in both the music and the
I apologize. I didn't know you were communicating with our technician.
so don't have
Levi.
to go continue on with that. So
Okay.
we were trying to figure out that we may have to use headsets over here, or at least buds in our ear to run this, so we don't have the reverberation, which is interesting. So we'll try to do that on our next program.
Well,
Because we have to set
is it hard to listen to?
No, it's not. It's not
Okay.
hard, but it's only when Dennis is talking because it's reverberating through the speaker system.
Oh, so Dennis has to use
Well,
headphones?
No, we have to use headphones. Okay, anyway, well, I want to get back to the Pope here. The Pope, this is the Pope's encyclical. Oh, wait a second.
You still have music
We
playing.
just have our music playing. I'm going to have to deal with that. Okay, that was Alien Folk Life, by the way. That was Alien Folk Life, and we're just gonna shut him down. Okay.
Oh, that's a different tune. I wonder which
Okay,
one.
we continued on with the.
Do you want me to
Alien
keep
Folk.
reading?
Yes, please.
Okay,
I'm just gonna-
we're now on chapter 6 of Pope Francis's encyclical on care of our common home. Ecological Education and Spirituality is the title of this chapter. Many things have to change course, but it is we human beings above all who need to change. We lack an awareness of our common origin, of our mutual belonging, and of a future to be shared with everyone. This basic awareness would enable the development of new convictions, attitudes, and forms of life. A great cultural and spiritual and educational challenge stands before us, and it will demand that we set out on a long path of renewal. Since the market tends to promote extreme consumerism in an effort to sell its products, people can easily get caught up in a whirlwind of needless buying and spending. Compulsive consumerism is one example of how the techno-economic paradigm affects individuals. Romano Guardini had already foreseen this, quote, "The gadgets and techniques forced upon him by the patterns of machine production and of abstract planning mass men accepts quite simply they are the forms of life itself. To either a greater or lesser degree, mass man is convinced that his conformity is both reasonable and just," unquote. This paradigm leads people to believe that they are free as long as they have the supposed freedom to consume. But those really free are the minority who wield economic and financial power. Amid this confusion, postmodern humanity has not yet achieved a new self-awareness capable of offering guidance and direction, and this lack of identity is a source of anxiety. We have too many means and only a few insubstantial ends. The current global situation engenders a feeling of instability and uncertainty, which in turn becomes a, quote, seedbed for collective selfishness, unquote. When people become self-centered and self-enclosed, their greed increases. The emptier a person's heart is, the more he or she needs things to buy, own, and consume. It becomes almost impossible to accept the limits imposed by reality. In this horizon, a genuine sense of the common good also disappears. As these attitudes become more widespread, social norms are respected only to the extent that they do not clash with personal needs. So our concern cannot be limited merely to the threat of extreme weather events, but must also extend to the catastrophic consequences of social unrest. Obsession with a consumerist lifestyle, above all, when people are capable of maintaining it, can only lead to violence and mutual destruction. Yet all is not lost. Human beings, while capable of the worst, are also capable of rising above themselves, choosing again what is good, and making a new start despite their mental and social conditioning. We are able to take an honest look at ourselves, to acknowledge our deep dissatisfaction, and to embark on new paths and authentic freedom. No system can completely suppress our openness to what is good, true, and beautiful, or our God-given ability to respond to His grace at work deep in our hearts. I appeal to everyone throughout the world not to forget this dignity, which is ours. No one has the right to take it from us. A change in lifestyle could bring healthy pressure to bear on those who wield political, economic, and social power. This is what consumer movements accomplish by boycotting certain products. They prove successful in changing the way businesses operate, forcing them to consider their environmental footprint and their patterns of production. While social pressure affects their earnings, businesses clearly have to find ways to produce differently. This shows us the great need for a sense of social responsibility on the part of consumers. Quote, purchasing is always a moral and not simply economic act, unquote. Today, in a word, quote, the issue of environmental degradation challenges us to examine our lifestyle, unquote. The Earth Charter asked us to leave behind a period of self-destruction and make a new start, but we have not as yet developed a universal awareness needed to achieve this. Here I would echo that courageous challenge, quote, as never before in history, common destiny beckons us to seek a new beginning. Let ours be a time remembered for the awakening of a new reverence for life, the firm resolve to achieve sustainability, the quickening of the struggle for justice and peace, and the joyful celebration of life, unquote. We are always capable of going out of ourselves toward the other. Unless we do this, other creatures will not be recognized for their true worth. We are unconcerned about caring for things for the sake of others. We fail to set limits on ourselves in order to avoid the suffering of others or the deterioration of our surroundings. Disinterested concern for others and the rejection of every form of self-centeredness and self-absorption are essential if we truly wish to care for our brothers and sisters and for the natural environment. These attitudes also attune us to the moral imperative of assessing the impact of our every action and personal decision on the world around us. If we can overcome individualism, we will truly be able to develop a different lifestyle and bring about significant changes in society. And I would interrupt here and say that I don't think we have to give up on individuals. I think this is compatible with cooperation. And that is the beauty of the way that nature works, that things that seem disparate or unrelated are always enhancing each other. And this is true of our nature and our humanity. We are individuals, but we're capable of cooperation, and cooperation makes us stronger and enhances individuality, in my opinion. Okay. Educating for the covenant between humanity and the environment. An awareness of the gravity of today's cultural and ecological crisis must be translated into new habits. Many people know that our current progress and the mere amassing of things and pleasures are not enough to give meaning and joy to the human heart, yet they feel unable to give up what the market sets before them. In those countries which should be making the greatest changes in consumer habits, young people have a new ecological sensitivity and a generous spirit, and some of them are making admirable efforts to protect the environment. At the same time, they have grown up in a milieu of extreme consumerism and affluence, which makes it difficult to develop the other habits. We are faced with an educational challenge. Environmental education has broadened its goals, whereas in the beginning it was mainly centered on scientific information, consciousness raising, and the prevention of environmental risks. It tends now to include a critique of the, quote, myths of modernity grounded in utilitarian mindset, individualism, unlimited progress, competition, consumerism, the unregulated market. It seeks also to restore the various levels of ecological equilibrium, establishing harmony within ourselves, with others, with nature and other living creatures, and with God. Environmental education should facilitate making the leap towards the transcendent, which gives ecological ethics its deepest meaning. It needs educators capable of developing an ethics of ecology and helping people through the effective pedagogy to grow in solidarity, responsibility, and compassionate care.
That's for all humanity.
Right? Yet this education aimed at creating a, quote, ecological citizenship, I like that, unquote, ecological citizenship, is at times limited to providing information and fails to instill good habits. The existence of laws and regulations is insufficient in the long run to curb bad conduct, even when effective means of enforcement are present. If the laws are to bring about significant, long-lasting effects, the majority of the members of society must be adequately motivated to accept them and personally transform to respond. Only by cultivating sound virtues will people be able to make a selfless, ecological commitment. A person who could afford to spend and consume more, but regularly uses less heating and wears warmer clothes, shows the kind of convictions and attitudes which help to protect the environment. There is a nobility in the duty to care for creation through little daily actions, and it is wonderful how education can bring about real changes in lifestyle. Education in environmental responsibility can encourage ways of acting which directly and significantly affect the world around us, such as avoiding the use of plastic and paper, reducing water consumption, separating refuse, cooking only what is can reasonably be consumed, showing care for other living beings, using public transport or carpooling, planting trees, turning off unnecessary lights, or any number of other practices. All of these reflect a generous and worthy creativity, which brings out the best in human beings. Reusing something instead of immediately discarding it when done for the right reasons can be an act of love, which expresses our own dignity. We must not think that these efforts are not going to change. We must not think that these efforts are not going to change the world. They benefit society, often unbeknownst to us, for they call forth a goodness which, albeit unseen, inevitably tends to spread. Furthermore, such actions can restore our sense of self-esteem. They can enable us to live more fully and feel that life on earth is worthwhile. Ecological education can take place in a variety of settings, at a school, in families, in the media, in catechism, and elsewhere. Good education plants seeds when we are young, and these continue to bear fruit throughout life. Here, though, I would stress the great importance of a family, which is, quote, the place in which life, the gift of God, can be properly welcomed and protected against the many attacks to which it is exposed, and can develop in accordance with what constitutes authentic human growth in the face of the so-called culture of death. The family is the heart of the culture of life, unquote. In the family, we first learn how to show love and respect for life. We are taught the proper use of things, order and cleanliness, respect for the local ecosystem, and care for all creatures. In the family, we receive an integral education, which enables us to grow harmoniously in personal maturity. In the family, we learn to ask without demanding, to say, quote, thank you, as an expression of genuine gratitude for what we have been given, to control our aggressivity and greed, and to ask forgiveness when we have caused harm. These simple gestures of heartfelt courtesy help to create a culture of shared life and respect for our surroundings. Do you want me to pause there?
Yeah, just Dennis, what did you think about that? About what the Pope was saying? Did you get that, or was that just did that just go over everybody's head?
Well, no, Dennis is really enjoying everything that Kuthin is reading. And by the way, if you like, before our show is over, in the news today, I have an article from the New York Times, Pope Francis Challenge, filling queues, his visit to South America. So,
is that where he is? Is that where he is now?
Well, he'll be going there.
Uh-huh.
Let's see. It says, I think it'll be next week.
Okay.
And you know, not next month, but the month after next, he'll be coming here.
Yeah.
We're going to invite him on our show.
Oh, wow.
We're going to send him an email to please come to our
Join us on the front stoop, Dennis.
Come to us Sunday on the front stoop, and we're going to talk about the HREM with the Pope. I think we're going to try to get them to have that happen.
Jeff said,
He doesn't use those words.
no, but I think he's close upon
A
it.
human renewable energy measure. He's right there. He just
It's the zero for human survival. It's the zero.
Baseline,
it's the zero.
The zero, the bottom, where we are, the dot, the arrow, where we start from for humanity.
You are here.
And he mentioned, that's when you see on a map, you are here. If you don't know where you are on the map, you can't get to where you have to be. So you have to know where you are first. And that's why we map things out so we know where we are. And that's where the problem is that we see with the economic system and the environment and the way things are working. We don't know where we are. And once we know where we are, we can get to where we want to be. Now,
I'll read on.
no, but before that, we're going to be taking a break very shortly.
Yeah, I know. I thought I'd
We'll
read
have
till the
6 more
break.
minutes, and we'll be
Because
taking
I've
a
only
break.
got 2 more paragraphs in this section, and
Go
we'll
ahead.
keep the continuity. Political institutions and various other social groups are also entrusted with helping to raise people's awareness. So too is the church. All Christian communities have an important role to play in ecological education. It is my hope that our seminaries and houses of formation will provide an education in responsible simplicity of life, in grateful contemplation of God's world, and in concern for the needs of the poor and the protection of the environment. Because the stakes are so high, we need institutions empowered to impose penalties for damage inflicted on the environment. But we also need the personal qualities of self-control and willingness to learn from each other. In this regard, quote, the relationship between a good aesthetic education and the maintenance of a healthy environment cannot be overlooked, unquote. By learning to see and appreciate beauty, we learn to reject self-interested pragmatism. If someone has not learned to stop and admire something beautiful, We should not be surprised if he or she treats everything as an object to be used and abused without scruple. If we want to bring about deep change, we need to realize that certain mindsets really do influence our behavior. Our efforts at education will be inadequate and ineffectual unless we strive to promote a new way of thinking about human life, human beings, life, society, and our relationship with nature. Otherwise, the paradigm of consumerism will continue to advance with the help of the media and the highly effective workings of the market.
Oh.
And you want me to take a break there, right?
No,
Or do you want me to
I
read?
want to comment a little bit
Okay.
before the break. We have a few minutes.
Mhm.
Did you hear what he just said? Would you read that last
About education?
Yeah.
Our efforts at education will be inadequate and ineffectual unless we strive to promote a new way of thinking about human beings, life, society, and our relationship with nature. Otherwise, the paradigm of consumerism will continue to advance with the help of the media and the highly effective workings of the market. And that's what we're living in now.
That's
living
where we
in
are now. And
the highly effective workings of the market with the help of the media, and politics is just kind of going along for the ride. They are ineffectual. Even people with great potential, like we felt that Barack Obama was, an individual can't carry this load. Everybody has to carry it together. No one person is going to be able to turn this tide. We all have to turn it together. And the Pope is saying it is a change of mindset. It can begin when you're a child and be nurtured from that point. But there's always, and as he said earlier on, you can always change. We have that capacity, even as adults, to change the way that we think and the way that we perceive our surroundings, whether or not, how we're going to behave within those surroundings and those environments.
The interesting part about this is that the Pope is saying everything that we've been saying on this program for years. Most people agree with what the Pope is saying. They know there's something radically wrong with our system. They know there's something wrong with this country and other countries, and that's because the countries are controlled by the economic system. But no one understands, how do we change that? And I think that the physicists, it's a part of an evolution process. Just like we discovered, gravity's been an obvious thing. We knew it for years, and then all of a sudden, just 400 years ago, Newton discovered an apple fell on his head. I mean, I'm sure that's an exaggerated story, but it's simplistic. It makes it simple. It's like the sun coming up every day. It's simplistic. The sun is going to rise today at a certain amount of time and set at a certain amount of time. The sun doesn't rise and set. It's the way a planetary system works. But to simplify things, they say rise and set. Anyone who studies this, or even a school child who's interested in it, knows that's not the way it happens. But that's what we agree upon, and it's based on physics. Whether the sun rises and sets or not, or we travel around the sun, or we circulate around within our spaceship, that's why it seems like it rises and sets. But we agree upon that measure. The same thing we agree upon, and we know that the rain falls down and the leaves fall and snow falls, and we can't jump up in the air very high because gravity is here. And somebody finally named that. Once you name it and measure, then once it's named and understood, you can then measure it. And that's the next evolutionary process that we're into now. And the beautiful part about this is we're not the only ones thinking about this. Bucky Fuller thought about this. There's other groups out there talking about this, but Bucky Fuller was one of the first people that I can find that wanted to put a measurement into it. He called it kilowatt hours. We all have to come together with this concept. We must get together with the basic measurement. It doesn't have to be the human renewable energy measure. It could be something else. But we all say that all humanity has to be measured, not in currency, but in an energy measurement that's part of nature or part of God, but it is part of the
Well,
sun.
that represents
That
their survival,
right.
their species survival, which is education, food, and shelter, basically. Of
Right.
course, we have other needs that are very, very important, that to communicate, to interrelate with each other, and that's a given also. But that's not something that the economic system necessarily intrudes upon. The economic system intrudes upon our ability to get food, our ability to have shelter, and our ability to have education. And these are things that are essential for human survival.
Of about 1 hour
Okay.
because of our natural resources.
Okay.
We're going to take a break now. We'll be back in about 5 minutes. This is the Foothills Trio with We the People. We'll be right back. Stand by.
We the people. We the people understand that there's an answer, there's a way. We the people have to say. So send the orders to prepare. That we the people do declare. Send the good news, send the word. We the people will be heard. We the people everywhere. There's a message in the air, and it's moving across the land. And if you listen, you can hear it well, my friend. We know the time has come to take our heads. Because if we don't, the chance might never come again. The future is reason, not building ways of war. And the time has come for reason to be heard. The purpose of the people's what this declaration's for. It's why our fathers told us word for word, let it be heard. We the people hand in hand. We the people understand that there's an answer, there's a way. We the people have to say. So send the orders to prepare. That we the people do declare. Send the good news, send the word. We the people will. We the people everywhere. And we won't accept excuses, and we won't accept the lies of those who lead our nations into hell. It's time to call the bluff and say to them, enough's enough. It's time we all should hear the tolling of the bell. And it's time to feed the hungry, and it's time to heal the pain, and it's time to beat our weapons into plows. It's time to hear the voices that have risen once again. It's the voices of the people, clear and loud, singing proud. We the people hand in hand. We the people understand that there's an answer, there's a way. We the people have to say. So send the orders to prepare. That we the people do declare. Send the good news, send the word. We the people will be heard. We the people everywhere. We the people hand in hand. We the people understand that there's an answer, there's a way. We the people have to say. So send the orders to prepare, that we the people do declare. Send the good news, send the word. We the people will be heard. We the people, we the people, we the people everywhere.
Well, we are back on Sunday on the Front Stoop. Thank you very much, Foothills Trio. And let me just shut them down a little bit. And we are going to go now to, we're back here on Sunday on the Front Stoop. We're waiting for Susan to come back to read some more. Let me get over to this thing here. And Dennis, are you there?
And Dennis is here too, yes.
Go ahead.
Oh, yes, Dennis has an article from the New York Times, and it's Pope Francis, and he's going to be visiting South America. This is interesting. The United States is in North America, and this is the first pope who ever came from America. All the other popes were from England, and they were from Europe, all from that side. This is the first pope from our side of the world.
But we're trying to make the world all what? One big world, one big earth, and not separated into continents
It's one
anymore.
big spaceship.
We're in one big spaceship together, Dennis.
That's why I'm glad he's on this side of the world.
Oh, okay. All right. So, shall I read on, Victor? Okay. We're in section 3, ecological conversion. The rich heritage of Christian spirituality, the fruit of 20 centuries of personal and communal experience, has a precious contribution to make to the renewal of humanity. Here I would like to offer Christians a few suggestions for the ecological spirituality grounded in the convictions of our faith, since the teachings of the gospel have direct consequences for our way of thinking, feeling, and living. More than in ideas or concepts as such, I am interested in how such a spirituality can motivate us to a more passionate concern for the protection of our world. A commitment this lofty cannot be sustained by doctrine alone, without a spirituality capable of inspiring us, without an, quote, interior impulse which encourages, motivates, nourishes, and keeps meaning to our individual and communal activity, unquote. Admittedly, Christians have not always appropriated and developed the spiritual treasures bestowed by God upon the church, where the life of the Spirit is not dissociated from the body or from nature or from worldly realities, but lived in and with them in communion with all that surrounds us. Quote, the external deserts in the world are growing because the internal deserts have become so vast. Well, that's an interesting, so he's saying, and that I'm butting in here, that what's happening on earth is also happening internally with the way that that makes sense. It's like a parallel path, how our general attitudes are and how the earth is changing. There's a connection there.
Yeah, I'm gonna come over here
For
and see what we're doing.
I
didn't understand that.
okay. It's a quote, and it's in the index. I haven't gone to the index for any of these quotes because it would be too much of an interruption. But all of them are, they say where they came. He says where they came from and how you can read more from that particular individual or whatever. But this quote is, the external deserts in the world are growing because the internal deserts have become so vast.
Yeah, that's hard to.
So he's referring to the attitudes that people have and that have been nurtured in us, with this particular socioeconomic
there were two things I want to. There were two things I want to bring
dynamic we have.
I want to bring out with that quote, if I think I understood it right. I was talking to a friend of ours who he runs a group called Religion Without Borders, and we were discussing this last night, and he was saying, I'm just such a small group compared to all this evil, and he called it, basically said evil, that's out there. How do we think about fighting this? And I'm saying one person at a time, and we may never win. We may just wipe out our spaceship. We may just become extinct. We may kill our water, our drinking water, our planet. There may only be a few people alive who are going to die slowly because of what the damage they're creating. That may be the case, but to do nothing would be a horrendous thing. And there's two things I want to bring out on Lord of the Rings. I think it was what was that little
Gimli.
Gimli. When Gimli said, there's no chance of success. We may die.
You're paraphrasing.
Yeah, I'm paraphrasing it. We may do this. It can't possibly happen. And in the next breath, he says, "What are we waiting for? Let's get going and do something." Well, that's the way I feel about the human renewable energy measure. It may never take effect, but without that measurement brought into the dooms, the Mordor, without bringing that measurement
to Mordor,
and
dropping it in the volcano,
dropping it into the volcano to cool it down, it won't happen. So we're trying to do that.
Anyway, then the volcano is the economic system. We're not referring to anything else but that.
Now, the other thing I want to bring out is Howard Zinn, which is someone I quote all the time, and his statement was very simple. He said, I guarantee you if you do nothing, nothing will happen. But if you do something, something may happen. So please try to do something. If there's one person or four people hearing this broadcast, do something. Don't just sit on your hands and do nothing. Please get out there. Use your social media. We got this great piece of social media. Get a human renewable energy measure out there. We're gonna try to zip it up a bit, but anyway, that's the part I'm bringing out.
Okay.
I'm going to sit and watch the monitor while you're reading. So.
All righty then. I'll continue with Pope Francis's encyclical here. The external deserts in the world are growing because the internal deserts have become so vast, unquote. For this reason, the ecological crisis is also a summons to profound interior conversion. It must be said that some committed and prayerful Christians, with the excuse of realism and pragmatism, tend to ridicule expressions of concern for the environment. Others are passive. They choose not to change their habits and thus become inconsistent. So what they all need is a, quote, ecological conversion, unquote, whereby the effects of their encounter with Jesus Christ become evident in their relationship with the world around them. Living our vocation to be protectors of God's handiwork is essential to the life of virtue. It is not an optional or secondary aspect of our Christian experience. In calling to mind the figure of St. Francis of Assisi, we come to realize that a healthy relationship with creation is one dimension of overall personal conversion, which entails the recognition of our errors, sins, faults, and failures, and leads to the heartfelt repentance and desire to change. The Australian bishop spoke of the importance of such conversion for achieving reconciliation with creation. Quote, to achieve such reconciliation, we must examine our lives and acknowledge the ways in which we have harmed God's creation through our actions and our failure to act. We need to experience a conversion or change of heart, unquote. Nevertheless, self-improvement on the part of individuals will not by itself remedy the extremely complex situation facing our world today. Isolated individuals can lose their ability and freedom to escape the utilitarian mindset and end up prey to the unethical consumerism bereft of social or ecological awareness. Social problems must be addressed by community networks and not simply by the sum of individual good deeds. This task, quote, will make such tremendous demands on man that he could never achieve it by individual initiative or even by the united effort of men bred in an individualistic way. The work of dominating the world calls for a union of skills and a unity of achievement that can only grow from quite a different attitude, unquote. The ecological conversion needed to bring about lasting change is also a community conversion. This conversion calls for a number of attitudes which together foster a spirit of generous care, full of tenderness. First, it entails gratitude and gratuitousness, a recognition that the world is God's loving gift and that we are called quietly to imitate his generosity in self-sacrifice and good works. Quote, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you, unquote. That's interesting. It also entails a loving awareness that we are not disconnected from the rest of creatures, but joined in a splendid universal communion. As believers, we do not look at the world from without, but from within, conscious of the bonds with which the Father has linked us to all beings. By developing our individual God-given capacities, an ecological conversion can inspire us to greater creativity and enthusiasm in resolving the world's problems and in offering ourselves to God, quote, as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable, unquote. We do not understand our superiority as a reason for personal glory or irresponsible dominion, but rather as a different capacity which, in its turn, entails a serious responsibility stemming from our faith. Various convictions of our faith developed at the beginning of this encyclical can help us to enrich the meaning of this conversion. These include the awareness that each creature reflects something of God and has a message to convey to us, and the security that Christ has taken unto himself this material world and now, risen, is intimately present to each being, surrounding it with his affection and penetrating it with his light. Then, too, there is the recognition that God created the world, writing into it an order and a dynamism that human beings have no right to ignore. We read in the gospel that Jesus says of the birds of the air that, quote, not one of them is forgotten before God, unquote.
But by the way, I want to interject here because I'm not a religious person, but I believe that. I may not believe in Jesus as he was the Son of God, but I believe there's something intuitive and there's something more than I can understand as a separate individual. And so I'm not saying I'm smart but my mind says to me that we have something much deeper than even the religion of Jesus or the religion of Christianity or Judaism or Buddhism. There's something that is inherently built into our brain, that we are in its infancy, and we have an obligation to use our brain power to help all of humanity. And if there is a God, and I say that, and I have 2 points that I think the Pope is doing a phenomenal job, because he's got a great bully pulpit, and he has the foresight to see the problems. But we need to say that it may not be the answer within specific religions, but all of humanity, and that's the part I see. What he's saying is very much, I agree with almost everything he's saying. However, if you're not a believer in Christianity or Judaism and you're an atheist, I consider myself a humanitarian. And we need to be able to come together as a species, not divide ourselves up. So please accept
what the words he's saying are, open with an open mind. And then the other thing is I'm suggesting is that the only thing that's missing in this encyclical is a basic measurement based on science. Even though he says we must base things on science, he doesn't have the HRM measurement, which we have gotten from different kinds of measurements through physics. And I'm saying we need to measure humanity through physics and measure them as far as our economic system goes through physics. That's my point.
And base it on our survival.
Our survival.
And we're the ones that use the economics and have created the economics.
Right.
A bird or a frog doesn't need it. They have no use for it. And so what we're doing is naming things closer and closer to what we can perceive as reality. I mean, at some point we named, the world is flat. Well, we know that that's not the reality that we accept now. We know that we live on a spherical
Unless
planet.
you're Thomas Friedman.
Yes, but he was talking about economics in that case, right? Which wasn't, that hasn't
Now,
really.
now look, if when you're listening to this program,
Completely different.
when you hear this this is going to be archived. Try to invite the Pope to join us and talk about the human renewable energy measure, because that's really important. So maybe in next month we can have the Pope. We're going to read the
He's been known to visit all kinds of places.
We're going to try to
Who knows?
have the whole encyclical on.
But we've got him here now with his words, Jeff.
Right,
So
we got him here with.
let's continue.
But
Right.
we're putting on. I mean, Levi's going to be working on trying to get some visuals into the encyclical so we can. It'll be more dramatic, and we'll have that on YouTube as soon as we can. We're going to continue reading the encyclical like Susan's doing now, but we're going to do it with other people without these interruptions of myself and Susan.
Yeah, well, this programming is meant to be for commentary,
Right.
and it's the first time we're reading it through in its entirety, and there's probably another, 15 pages here.
And we also need.
So we're almost to the end.
We also need Buckminster Fuller's readings, and we're going to try to get a program called The Bucky Show and get that on our programming. So this is stuff we're working on, and this is a humanitarian station. So we really want to. And the Pope, you can't get more humanitarian than this Pope has gotten. So this is where we are.
This is a very interesting point in the history of the Catholic Church, and to have a spokesperson in the Pope who is their spokesperson, and he is expressing these kinds of concepts is really, really great. More than that, it's profound. Okay, I'm going to keep reading, and I'm going to read through the next break. Okay.
Through the next break, okay.
Because there's only about a half
I was going
hour.
to play Pat Humphrey's Hands.
Yeah, but we don't have permission.
Okay, we'll have to get that. Okay, we'll call for permission for that.
Okay, sometimes it's hard to get permission for certain music. Okay, because it's hard to get in touch with the artist. All right, then. The next section is section 4. Oh, I thought we just did section 5. Oh, well. 222, paragraph 222, Joy and Peace. Christian spirituality proposes an alternative understanding of the quality of life and encourages a prophetic and contemplative lifestyle, one capable of deep enjoyment, free of the obsession with consumption. We need to take up an ancient lesson found in different religious traditions and also in the Bible. It is the conviction that, quote, less is more, unquote. That, I have to interrupt, that's also Buckminster Fuller's constant refrain.
Less is more. And he simplified his architecture with less is more.
Right, exactly. A constant flood of new consumer goods can baffle the heart and prevent us from cherishing each thing and each moment. To be serenely present to each reality, however small it may be, opens us to much greater horizons of understanding and personal fulfillment. Christian spirituality proposes a growth marked by moderation and the capacity to be happy with little. It is a return to that simplicity which allows us to stop and appreciate the small things, to be grateful for the opportunities which life affords us, to be spiritually detached from what we possess, and not to succumb to the sadness for which we lack. This implies avoiding the dynamic of dominion and the mere accumulation of pleasures. Such sobriety, when lived freely and consciously, is liberating. It is not a lesser life or one lived with less intensity. On the contrary, it is a way of living life to the full. In reality, those who enjoy more and live better each moment are those who have given up dipping here and there, always on the lookout for what they do not have. They experience what it means to appreciate each person and each thing, learning familiarity with the simplest things and how to enjoy them, so that they're able to shed unsatisfied needs, reducing their obsessiveness and weariness. Even living on little, they can live a lot. Above all, when they cultivate other pleasures and find satisfaction in fraternal encounters, in service,
Can I
in
interrupt?
developing
Can I-
their gifts. Wait, let me just finish the idea he's got here. Find satisfaction in fraternal encounters, in service, in developing their gifts, in music and in art, in contact with nature, in prayer. Happiness means knowing how to limit some needs which only diminish us and being open to the many different possibilities which life can offer. You can't interrupt the Pope.
Okay, well, look, I don't mean to.
He's not used to being interrupted.
Look, Pope. Look, what do they call him? Your Highness? What do they call him?
I don't know.
You gracious, Your Excellency.
I don't know.
Dennis, what do we call a Pope?
What is his, oh, I think Dennis
Dennis,
has gone
is he
off
there?
to, he's probably gone off to eat breakfast or something.
I'm just trying to think what do we call the Pope?
I don't know. Your
I think
gracious,
Your
Grace.
Your
Your
Excellent-
no, Grace.
Your Excellency.
No, your Grace.
Your Grace?
I bet it's.
I thought it was Your Excellent.
No, Excellency is like a king or something.
Well, anyway, look.
I think it's
but
your Grace.
I want to bring up what the Pope. Would you see what the Pope says? We need to change our needs. No, we need to change our wants. If our needs are met, our basic needs are met.
Then you're not vulnerable to all the propaganda.
Right.
And stuff.
He connected needs and wants. And I found when we were into a very poor country, specifically Cuba, by the way, it was interesting. When we were in Cuba, the people there didn't have very much money. And they were reasonably happy. They played dominoes, there was artwork, the kids were happy as could be. They played pool, they were educated, they spoke 3 languages. I mean, this was a poor country, but very much happiness because their basic needs were met and their wants were less than needed. So that's where he was going with that. I didn't want to.
Well, their wants were less than they didn't have complex wants, is what you're saying. They were happy. And not being consumerized and propagandized.
Yeah, that, and I think that's why Castro or this dictatorship was so much of a dictator, because they did not want to allow how do I put it? They didn't want to allow the consumerism to come into their country.
Yeah, but they controlled it in the population at large, but not within their communist group.
Exactly.
So it's a dichotomy there
right.
and an inconsistency. But as you say, there are little pockets of things that are sort of working, but not quite. But they're anyway. And that's actually a system that isn't totally voluntary either.
Right. Exactly.
So you have a situation where people are growing up in that kind of context, but they find it very hard to then break out of it to experience some other, way of living. Not that it would be necessary if you're happy. Happy is the same anywhere you go in the world.
We're having a harder time breaking out of it.
Yeah, I mean, the more you're propagandized and consumerized, the harder it is, right? For people to think in a different way.
We would normally take a break now, but we're not going to do that.
I'm going to go on. Sobriety and humility.
Before you go on,
Yes, go ahead.
I mentioned the article today.
Yeah, that's great. People should definitely try to get to that. Because
I'm not going to read the whole thing.
Go ahead, read what you'd like.
Right. Here in the United States of America, the Pope will be here a month after next. No, not
Mhm.
next month, in August, but in
Oh, August?
September. The Pope will be visiting New York, well, much of America in
Mhm.
this September. And of
Okay.
course, New York State is going to be right down there in New York City to visit the United Nations, which I think is very interesting. But let me just read the first paragraph in today's paper.
Sure.
And this is again from the New York Times by William Newman. It says, Pope Francis has turned heads with bold stance on climate change and income inequality. He helped broker a historic thaw between the United States and Cuba. He has shaken up the Strachey brand of the Roman Catholic Church. So I just think it's very interesting to show how different this Pope is, and to me, how much better he is in helping to save our planet.
Well, I think that, even there are different kind of flavors to the way that peoples have evolved on different continents, as you were trying to say before. He's the first one from our continent here, and the South American section of it. And there's all kinds of special and unique influences that he grew up under. I understand he was the son of a railroad worker. His father worked on the railroads. He was not, he came from a working class. He understands, a huge swath, from where he started and what he's experienced throughout his road to becoming a pope. So he's got maybe a very different kind of influences than any pope before him had, and maybe not quite as many advantages to begin with, so that he understands better how most people are living. And there's incredible long history of complex civilization in South America, Central America, of course, North America, all the Native American populations that combined with the immigrants from other countries. But there's, this could be some of that starting now to assert itself, which is, as Dennis was saying, it's creating maybe another way of looking at things. He's bringing another way of looking at things from his origins, and it's a good thing, as Clinton would say, a good thing.
It's a good thing, as Bill Clinton would say. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
By the way, Clinton said some interesting things. He said,
let's get into it some other day. Right.
But
I just wanted to say that just as an aside, but not to bring out any more than that.
And Dennis again brought up the fact that to save our planet, but the Pope is never saying that the planet will be saved. He's saying to save our species.
Yeah, people.
And Buckminster Fuller would agree with that. We're on the spaceship, and I don't think even a nuclear war would damage the planet, but it would wipe out the species. It would kill
many species.
It would kill our atmosphere, and if it kills the atmosphere, you'd wipe out the species. The planet will still be here. The spaceship we're traveling in will be here. We're traveling in a spaceship. So let's look at it like this: that this is not our planet. This is our spaceship, which we may call a planet, but we're traveling around in space in a specific orbit.
But if you're going to look at it that way, you got to look at it like your home, and you got to maintain stuff. You got to fix the plumbing. You got to make sure that the heating system works. You got to make sure your roof doesn't leak. You've got to, and so you're maintaining your spaceship.
You have to grow your vegetables.
Right, exactly.
You have to make sure that your water supply works.
It's not automatic. Nature has been functioning, beautifully, and will continue to do so. But if we're in our activities as people damaging what nature is able to continue to do and what is essential for the survival of life on the planet, then we're not maintaining things properly. You know, you have to go back to the basics. You know.
Right, it's habitable.
Right, exactly.
Right. Look at Jeff, right now I could go to Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, but the Earth is the only one I know of where I could actually survive.
That's because that
true.
spaceship doesn't have the proper atmosphere and the proper conditions for us to live on. So if we go to that other spaceship and we try to convert those spaceships, that's not the way. I don't think we can do that. We are on a spaceship that normally would sustain us.
See, this spaceship made us into what we are, and we can only
We work together with it.
Yeah, and we evolved here to what we are, and that's why we're compatible with this particular Earth, this particular planet.
Spaceship.
Right. If we'd evolved on Mars, we would be in a completely different form.
There may be life on Mars, but we can't even recognize it.
No, we can't.
We don't know.
It's completely different.
It's a different thinking process than we would be. So we don't know.
And they may not
these
even
things.
think like we, you know, it could be completely different.
But we do have I think we have a
On every
unique
level.
species, and we're just a very, very small species. We're very stupid as far as, you know, and I love this quote: "A closed mind is a great thing to waste
Or to lose.
or to lose." It's really a great, if you have a closed mind, that's a really good thing to lose, because it's really a shame, because if you can't open your mind up, then you can't conceive different concepts, and there's just so many different concepts out there that all humanity comes up with. Some of them may be right on, some of them may be way out, but it's still, they're different concepts, and you must, I think that human beings should open their mind up, and they could open their mind up if they will open their mind up to just at least accept the fact that other people have other ideas. That's my point.
Okay, let's get back to some of Pope Francis's ideas. Okay.
Go ahead.
Sobriety and humility are not favorably regarded in the last century. And yet, when there is a general breakdown in the exercise of a certain virtue in personal and social life, it ends up causing a number of imbalances, including environmental ones. That is why it is no longer enough to speak only of the integrity of ecosystems. We have to dare to speak of the integrity of human life, of the need to promote and unify all the great values. Once we lose our humility and become enthralled with the possibility of limitless mastery over everything, we inevitably end up harming society and the environment. It is not easy to promote this kind of healthy humility or happy sobriety when we consider ourselves autonomous, when we exclude God from our lives and replace him with our own ego and think that our subjective feelings can define what is right and what is wrong. On the other hand, no one can cultivate a sober and satisfying life without being at peace with him or herself. An adequate understanding of spirituality consists in filling out what we mean by peace, which is much more than the absence of war. Inner peace is closely related to care for ecology and for the common good, because lived out authentically, it is reflected in a balanced lifestyle together with a capacity for wonder, which takes us to a deeper understanding of life. Nature is filled with words of love, but how can we listen to them amid constant noise, interminable and nerve-wracking distractions, or the cult of appearances? Many people today sense a profound imbalance, which drives them to frenetic activity and makes them feel busy in a constant hurry, which in turn leads them to ride roughshod over everything around them. This too affects how they treat the environment. An integral ecology includes taking time to recover a serene harmony with creation, reflecting on our life work and our ideals, and contemplating the Creator who lives among us and surrounds us, whose present, quote, must not be contrived, but found, uncovered, unquote. We are speaking of an attitude of the heart, one which approaches life with serene attentiveness, which is capable of being fully present to someone without thinking of what comes next, which accepts each moment as a gift from God to be lived to the full. Jesus taught us this attitude when he invited us to contemplate the lilies of the field and the birds of the air, or when seeing the rich young man and knowing his restlessness, quote, he looked at him with love, unquote. He was completely present to everyone and to everything, and in this way he showed us the way to overcome that unhealthy anxiety which makes us superficial, aggressive, and compulsive consumers. One expression of this attitude is when we stop and give thanks to God for before and after meals. I ask all believers to return to this beautiful and meaningful custom. That moment of blessing, however brief, reminds us of our dependence on God for life. It strengthens our feeling of gratitude for the gifts of creation. It acknowledges those who by their labors provided us with these goods, and it reaffirms our solidarity with those in greatest need. Civic and political love. Care for nature is part of a lifestyle which includes the capacity for living together and communion. Jesus reminded us that we have God as our common Father and that this makes us brothers and sisters. Fraternal love can only be gratuitous. It can never be a means of repaying others for what they have done or will do for us. That is why it is possible to love our enemies. This same gratuitousness inspires us to love and accept the wind, the sun, the clouds, even though we cannot control them. In this sense, we can speak of a, quote, universal fraternity, unquote. We must regain the conviction that we need one another, that we have a shared responsibility for others in the world, and that being good and decent are worth it. We have had enough of the immorality and the mockery of ethics, goodness, faith, and honesty. It is time to acknowledge that light-hearted superficiality has done us no good. When the foundations of social life are corroded, what ensues are battles over conflicting interests, new forms of violence and brutality, and obstacles to the growth of a genuine culture of care for the environment. Saint Teresa invites us to practice the little ways of love, not to miss out on a kind word, a smile, or any small gesture which sows peace and friendship. An integral ecology is also made up of simply daily gestures which break with the logic of violence, exploitation, and selfishness. In the end, a world of exacerbated consumption is at the same time a world which mistreats life in all its forms. Love, overflowing with small gestures of mutual care, is also civic and political, and it makes itself felt in every action that seeks to build a better world. Love for society and commitment to the common good are outstanding expressions of charity, which affect not only relationships between individuals, but also, quote, macro relationships, social, economic, and political ones, unquote. That is why the Church has set before the world the ideal of a, quote, civilization of love, unquote. Social love is the key to authentic development, quote, in order to make society more human, more worthy of the human person. Love in social life, political, economic, and cultural, must be given renewed value, becoming the constant and highest norm for all activity, unquote. In this framework, along with the importance of little everyday gestures, social love moves us to devise larger strategies to halt environmental degradation and to encourage, quote, a culture of care, which permeates all of society. When we feel that God is calling us to intervene with others in these social dynamics, we should realize that this too is part of our spirituality, which is an exercise of charity, and as such matures and sanctifies us. Not everyone is called to engage directly in political life. Society is also enriched by a countless array of organizations which work to promote the common good and to defend the environment, whether natural or urban. Some, for example, show concern for a public place, a building, a fountain, an abandoned monument, a landscape, a square, and strive to protect, restore, improve, or beautify it as something belonging to everyone. Around these community actions, relationships develop, are recovered, and a new social fabric emerges. Thus, a community can break out of the indifference induced by consumerism. These actions cultivate a shared identity with a story which can be remembered and handed on. In this way, the world and the quality of life of the poorest are cared for with a sense of solidarity, which is at the same time aware that we live in a common home which God has entrusted to us. These community actions, when they express self-giving love, can also become intense spiritual experiences. Chapter 6, Sacramental Signs and the Celebration of Rest. The universe unfolds in God who fills it completely. Hence, there is a mystical meaning to be found in a leaf, in a mountain trail, in a dewdrop, in a poor person's face. The ideal is not only to pass from the exterior to the interior to discover the action of God in the soul, but also to discover God in all things. Saint Bonaventure teaches us that, quote, contemplation deepens the more we feel the work of God's grace within our hearts, and the better we learn to encounter God in creatures outside ourselves. St. John of the Cross taught us all the goodness present in the realities and experiences of this world, quote, is present in God eminently and infinitely, or more properly, in each of these sublime realities is God, unquote. This is not because the finite things of this world are really divine, but because the mystic experiences the intimate connection between God and all beings, and thus feels that, quote, all things are God, unquote. Standing awestruck before a mountain, he or she cannot separate this experience from God and perceives that the interior awe being lived has to be entrusted to the Lord. Quote, mountains have heights, and they are plentiful, vast, beautiful, graceful, bright, fragrant. These mountains are what my beloved is to me. Lonely valleys are quiet, pleasant, cool, shady, and flowing with fresh water. In the variety of their groves and in the sweet song of their birds, they afford abundant recreation and delight to the senses, and in their solitude and silence, they refresh us and give rest. These valleys are what my beloved is to me, unquote.
But I want to interrupt again. We still have a few minutes left of the program. There is something out there called the love economy, which is interesting. There's all kinds of comments about what the Pope is talking about, but the problem I'm seeing is how do we get from where we are now to where we all want to go? The love economy, the resource-based economy, the you can call all the isms, socialism, capitalism, but it doesn't really matter what the isms are as long as all humanity has their basic needs met for a minimal amount of life. And that's where the HRM comes in, the Human Renewable Energy Measure. And when you put the baseline in, that every human being on the planet for 1 hour or a little more, more or less work a day, because we have machinery to normally do stuff, and we have technology to grow food, to give us this kind of media, to help people. If they have to work about an hour a day, somehow taking care of a child, whatever, you got to change the definition of work too. But once you've done that, then the basic needs can be met. It's so important to understand that. But when he talked about love, there is such a thing as a love economy, but how do you get there without the measure? Anyway, I wanted to bring that out.
Okay. Should I go on?
Please go ahead.
Until,
Yeah, I'm going to.
maybe 2 minutes or less?
I'm going to go start. I'll get ready for the closeout music. Okay, we're getting there. I'm going to just let Susan keep on reading. Dennis, you have anything you want to add?
Well, Dennis just wants to thank you and Susan for listening to all this great speech from the Pope. And also, real quick, what I read, even though it's the month after next that the Pope comes here to America, he's supposed to be going to South America starting tomorrow. Wait a minute. No, it's today, Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a new world.
All right. Well, safe trip.
Safe trip, Pope. And I'll tell you, this Pope, in my opinion, has really got a problem because the powers that be don't want to hear him, and the media is cutting him off. And I would really be careful because he's a valuable guy, and they normally wipe out people who have a soapbox or a platform as big as his, who is trying to take down the economy or change the economy. So this is a very, very first of all, courageous Pope, and I really want to take my hat off to this guy. He's really, to have someone alive in this part of the life after 5,000 years with this kind of a soapbox opening his mouth. It's unbelievable to me that even the mainstream media and our religious politicians,
and most of them claim to be Christians,
right?
Which is amazing. Okay, let's go on because you're going to have a coughing fit.
Thank you, and I really want everybody to pray for the Pope.
Oh yeah, for his safety on this trip.
I just want him to do something, not pray. I want him to physically do something. Talk about the HREM, talk about the Human Renewable Energy Measure, and talk about changing the economy. Get out there. Don't pray. Prayer is just really, that's what they want. That's what mainstream media wants you to do, is pray. We need to do more than pray. We need to have a peaceful way of changing the system and use your social media. Don't pray. Get on your social media and talk about a way of a human measurement that helps humanity. Get on your social media.
Well, God has given us the social media.
Right,
you can put it that way. All right. I'll go on. The sacraments are this is the Pope speaking. The sacraments are a privileged way in which nature is taken up by God to become a means of mediating supernatural life. Through our worship of God, we are invited to embrace the world on a different plane. Water, oil, fire, and colors are taken up in all their symbolic power and incorporated in our act of praise. The hand that blesses is an instrument of God's love and reflection of the closeness of Jesus Christ, who came to accompany us on the journey of life. Water, poured over the body of a child in baptism, is a sign of new life. Encountering God does not mean fleeing from this world or turning our back on nature. This is especially clear in the spirituality of Christian East. Quote, beauty, which in the East is one of the best loved names expressing the divine harmony and the model of humanity transfigured, appears everywhere, in the shape of a church, in the sounds, in the colors, in the lights, in the scents, unquote. For Christians, all the creatures of the material universe find their true meaning in the incarnate Word, for the Son of God has incorporated in his person part of the material world, planting in it a seed of definitive transformation. Quote, Christianity does not reject matter, rather bodilessness is considered in all its value in the liturgical act, whereby the human body is disclosed in its inner nature as a temple of the Holy Spirit and is united with the Lord Jesus, who himself took a body for the world's salvation, unquote. It is in the Eucharist that all that has been created finds its greatest exaltation. Grace, which tends to manifest itself tangibly, found unsurpassable expression when God himself became man and gave himself as food for his creatures. The Lord, in the culmination of the mystery of the incarnation, chose to reach our intimate depths through a fragment of matter. He comes not from above, but from within. He comes that we might find him in this world of ours. In the Eucharist, fullness is already achieved. It is the living center of the universe, the overflowing core of love and of inexhaustible life, joined to the incarnate Son, present in the Eucharist, the whole cosmos gives thanks to God. Indeed, the Eucharist is itself an act of cosmic love. Yes, cosmic, because even when it is celebrated on the humble altar of a country church, the Eucharist is always in some way celebrated on the altar of the world. The Eucharist joins heaven and earth. It embraces and penetrates all creation. The world which came forth from God's hands returns to him in blessed and undivided adoration. In the bread of the Eucharist, quote, creation is projected toward divinization, towards the holy wedding feast, towards unification with the Creator himself, unquote. Thus, the Eucharist is also a source of light and motivation for our concerns for the environment, directing us to be stewards of all creation. And I guess he's talking about the taking of the bread and the wine.
It's a ceremonial.
Yes,
thing.
exactly. Because not all of us who are doing this or hearing this or understand these references.
What is the Eucharist, you know?
That is the sacrament that you take.
Susan, you want to answer that?
No, you have to answer it because I'm
You're
not
not Catholic,
knowledgeable.
you are.
Yeah.
Put it in, just give me one sentence with that word in it.
Eucharist.
Eucharist. Oh, well, let's not dwell on this. We don't have
Okay, we don't
much
have much
time.
time.
And somebody will correct us, I'm sure.
Someone will email us and tell us what the Eucharist is.
On Sunday, our participation in the Eucharist has special importance. Sunday, like the Jewish Sabbath, is meant to be a day which heals our relationships with God. That's today.
Sunday on the front stoop.
Right, with ourselves, with others, and with the world. Sunday is the day of the resurrection, the quote, first day of new creation, whose first fruits are the Lord's risen humanity, the pledge of the final transfiguration of all created reality. It also proclaims, quote, man's eternal rest in God, unquote. In this way, Christian spirituality incorporates the value of relaxation and festivity. We tend to demean contemplative rest as something unproductive and unnecessary, but this is to do away with the very thing which is most important about work, its meaning. We are called to include in our work a dimension of receptivity and gratuity, which is quite different from mere inactivity. Rather, it is another way of working, which forms part of our very essence. It protects human action from becoming empty activism. It also prevents that unfettered greed and sense of isolation which make us seek personal gain to the detriment of all else. The law of weekly rest forbade work on the seventh day, quote, so that your ox and your donkey may have rest, and the son of your maidservant and the stranger may be refreshed, unquote.
I want to thank
Rest
you all for
opens our eyes to the larger picture and gives us renewed sensitivity to the rights of others. And so the day of rest, centered on the Eucharist, sheds its light on the whole week and motivates us to greater concern for nature and the poor. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you all for listening. Stay tuned for Sunday on the Front Porch next week, and it's on the Front Stoop. Longest stoop.
Fossil fuel affects our lives.
Thank you all. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Dennis. You sound so far away. It all comes down to energy. We can get our energy from all the grass and trees. Energy, it all comes down to energy. You wonder where the money's gone. Listen to the thought. It all comes down to energy.